And thank you for attending the first safety conference webinar presentation of 2012. My name is Katie Parrish, Associate Publisher of Maximum Capacity Media, and your moderator and host for today's conference. My contact information is located at the bottom of this page and will be available at the end of the presentation as well, in case you have some follow-up questions, comments, ideas, suggestions after today's event. Today's webinar is sponsored by CertifyMeOnline.net, which was created by Tom Wilkerson in 1999 as a provider of workplace training programs and is the industry's leader in online interactive training and testing for powered material handling equipment and aerial lifts. For more information on online certification, visit CertifyMeOnline.net, or you can shoot me an email after this presentation and I'll get you in touch with Tom directly. First introduced in 2007, the safety conference's objectives were basically to provide and raise awareness of safety in the construction, rental, and industrial industries. The topics are selected to help provide clarification to these industries, and additionally, the awareness and clarification is brought to the audience in hopes of unifying industry efforts, which ultimately will save lives of equipment operators and workers on the ground. Today's presenter is one of the most well-known safety experts in the industry, having received accolades from a variety of organizations and associations, including recently the American Rental Association, for his service to operator and equipment safety. Jeff Stachowiak is the National Safety Training Director for Sunbelt Rentals and the current Vice President of the Scaffold and Access Industry Association, which both web addresses are located on this page. Today he will present on the subject of best practices and aerial work platform training. If you have any questions for Jeff during the presentation, please type them into the chat box on your screen and he'll be happy to review them after the presentation. Additionally, this presentation is recorded and can be accessed this afternoon following the event on safetyconference.com and the Maximum Capacity Media YouTube channel. I'll show you addresses for both following the end of Jeff's presentation. That's all I have. So I'm going to pass this over to Jeff Stachowiak, and he's going to go ahead and get started on his presentation. Let me go ahead and make him the presenter, and we'll get started whenever you're ready, Jeff.
Great. There we go. Thank you, Katie, very much, and thanks to Certify Me Online for sponsoring this event. We're going to talk about best practices in aerial work platform training, and as Katie mentioned, I am Safety Training Director for Sunbelt Rentals. And first thing I want to talk to is industry commitment. And our industry commitment involves the entire industry, which includes rental operators, manufacturers, associations for those entities, educators, regulators, users, and operators, and we're dedicated to best practices related to training and safe use of aerial work platforms. And for those of you that might be listening in from other countries, in North America we call it aerial work platforms. In Europe they call them MUPs, or mobile elevated work platforms. We're using the term AWP or aerial work platforms throughout the seminar. Proper use achieves successful project completion and assures operator safety, and this is particularly critical when working with AWP equipment, which offers so much versatility and assistance to those who use it. The priority of all in the industry is to make sure that everyone who owns and operates AWP equipment has a clear understanding of his or her role in the requirements for the safe use of the equipment. The industry has joined forces to clarify those responsibilities, particularly in the areas of general training and familiarization, and we're committed to put forth initiatives that increase awareness of best practices, clarify responsibilities, and address the safe use of equipment. The best practices I'll be referring to today will be the one on the left there. This is the statement of best practices of general training and familiarization of aerial work platform equipment, and this was really a groundbreaking document when we published it in 2010, I believe. It came together because of 5 organizations that worked together over a period of about 10 months to develop this document. American Rental Association was an integral part of it, organizing the other 4 groups to put them together and to actually publish a document. Associated equipment manufacturers and associated equipment distributors, the other 2 participants who represent manufacturers and distributors. IPAP, International Platform Access Federation, which is a training organization, and the Scaffold and Access Industry Association. And then shortly after that, within a year after that, Best Practices for General Training came out. We came out with a document, Statement of Best Practices of Personal Fall Protection Systems for Aerial Work Platform Equipment as well, which is another, I think, groundbreaking document that addresses all the regulations governing the use of a harness and lanyard and guardrails on aerial work platform equipment, and some suggested ways of using the proper fall protection when using the various types of aerial work platform equipment. So I encourage you to look those up. All 5 organizations have these documents on their website, so whichever one you frequent, like Aerial Work, American Rental Association, or IPAP, or the Scaffold Access Industry Association, I put their website up on the screen there, saiaonline.org, and you can find those documents there, and you can download them and read them, and they're in PDF format. Be happy to supply hard copies if you're interested as well, but you can download them on these websites. First, I want to define the industry. This was important for us when we developed these documents. We're looking at owners of equipment, dealers, including rental companies, equipment users, including rental companies, owners, contractors, supervisors, equipment operators, including rental companies, because as a rental company we operate the equipment, contractors who rent the equipment, own it, homeowners who rent it. A lot of homeowners are renting aerial work platform equipment now, and that's only going to grow. Trainers and training companies, obviously a lot more training companies out there and a lot more companies doing training as well. Safety managers and safety professionals, a key element in driving training and the requirement for training, I think, are safety managers and safety professionals in the industry. Brokers and auction companies, another big element in around the world and in the U.S. I think they're an important aspect of this. Governing bodies, including OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration here in the U.S., and standards organizations such as ANSI, American National Standards Institute. Here in North America, we have ANSI Committee that writes the standards for the safe use of aerial work platform equipment. And last but not least, insurance companies playing a role in this, and we'll talk a little bit about that on some slides. Issues facing the industry, OSHA and ANSI. OSHA here in the United States enforces their regulations, and there are regulations governing the use of aerial work platforms. It's found under the scaffold standard. That often is kind of confusing to people, but ANSI, American National Standards Institute. Understand the importance of proper general training and familiarization. General training, we'll talk about what the difference is between general training and familiarization, and a little better clarification of what that is. Improper training or inadequate training. There are some people out there that just show a 20-minute video and figure you're trained, or maybe somebody shows them how to operate the lift and they think they're trained, and we'll talk about that. Confusion between general training and familiarization, what they are. A misunderstanding of who's qualified to be a trainer. This is something OSHA has not addressed. Who is a trainer, who can do training, what kind of qualifications should they have. We'll talk about that. Need for clarification of rental companies' responsibilities as well, and that's where the American Rental Association comes in, and the impact on insurance. Some recent news headlines. Crane tips over Performing Arts Center in Kansas City. 1 killed in crane accident in downtown Kansas City. Fatal crane accident in Arts Center is under investigation. And you notice it says crane. I pulled these actual headlines, and they're not cranes. They are actually aerial work platforms. New Jersey man killed in Philadelphia crane accident. Another headline that said crane when in fact it was an aerial work platform. Worker falls 40 feet from scissor lift. 2 workers killed when lift tips over. Those are just some recent headlines in the last couple of years. The impact on insurance claims, and again, thanks to the American Rental Association for sharing this information as part of our initial presentation when we introduced best practices for training. Injuries from aerial work platform accidents, most expensive ARA insurance services claims. American Rental Association insurance covers a lot of rental companies, not the big ones, but a lot of the medium and smaller size rental companies. And they shared with us that 1%, basically all AWP, of all the accidents that they deal with, aerial work platforms are only 1% of those claims, but they're 8% of the claim severity, which shows you that if you're going to have an accident, or if an accident's going to happen on an aerial work platform, it's probably going to be bad, and it's going to cost you a chunk of money. Injuries that we're looking at, fractures, including multiple fractures, minor injuries, fatalities, electric shock, multiple injuries, including internal, head injuries, and paralysis. And we're not even going to talk about equipment damage and property damage in this seminar regarding this, because all we're looking at is injuries here, but there's obviously equipment damage that can be bad, and total loss of the equipment as well, and some tip overs, as well as property damage when something does tip over on a job site or something is damaged. And this is how it breaks down. American Rental Association, again, thanks for sharing this. This is AWP injury and property damage claims, liability reasons. And it gives us some guidance here as to what's happening after the accident. Safety gear, set up and install, maintenance is a big chunk of that. And then a little over half, there's just no reason given for what the liability was. So kind of an unknown area. Impact on insurance, improper instruction and familiarization upon delivery when we deliver an aerial work platform to the customer or user. Operator errors in operating the equipment, which causes accidents, which causes insurance claims and lawsuits, increased cost of risk. Proper instruction and familiarization, what will that do for you? Reduces liability for accidents, prevents accidents from occurring in the first place, and that's got to be everybody's main objective is in all this is how to prevent the accident from happening in the first place. And that's when you go back to the ARA insurance claim being only 1% of all the claims, that's one of the problems. Aerial work platforms are extremely safe, no question about it, and obviously much more safe than use of ladders and in some cases scaffolding. But when it is not used properly and that accident does happen, it can be bad. And you know, the good news is there aren't a lot of accidents. The bad news is when one happens, it can be bad and kind of a surprise to some of the smaller rental companies because they've never had an accident before, and then when one happens, they over a period of time through the litigation process find out what they didn't do, what they should have done, and that can be a rude awakening sometimes. What drives our concerns in this training realm? There's customers' concerns. General contractors requiring proof of training and familiarization from anyone operating lifts on their job sites. We have met with many large general contractors over the last, let's say, last 6 to 10 years, and this requirement is growing. More and more general contractors, safety people, walk up to an operator of an aerial work platform and say, "Have you been trained?" And if they can't answer that question to their satisfaction or show some training, proof of training, generally the general contractor sends the contractor home and until they get training. And you know, probably about half of the training requests we get at Sunbelt Rentals is, "I need training today because I've been kicked off the job until I can produce some training requirements, so some training records." And so we're seeing a lot of that. As well, we're seeing a real push with the military now and military bases questioning, and this applies, again, not just to AWPs or aerial work platforms, it applies to all equipment now. We're seeing more and more safety people on Navy sites, Army bases, Marine bases questioning contractors using any equipment and whether they've had training. So we're seeing a large push on that as well. Regulatory concerns, OSHA focuses on fall hazards. OSHA's compliance officers are directed to look at all fall hazards as they drive around on visits to job sites. So fall hazards, and obviously aerial work platforms present fall hazards. So we looked at best practices and what are the industry best practices, and that's what these two documents that I showed you in an earlier slide address. The best practices we feel the industry can present to users of aerial platforms. Why have a robust training program? Why do you need a training program? Well, we need skilled operators, and skilled operators means they've been trained, they've got some experience on operating that particular aerial work platform and how it operates when they're operating it. For job efficiency, avoiding downtime, comply with the GCs, the general contractor safety requirements, to avoid injuries, avoid property damage, avoid bad press. No one wants bad press, and generally what happens here in the States again is when a news article is written about an accident on a job site, some of the news reporters go so far as to go into OSHA's website and look up the name of the company to see if they've had any OSHA issues in the past, which is all public information, and sometimes they publish that right in the paragraph or the story that published about the accident, that, well, so-and-so company had this accident, and they've been investigated by OSHA 3 times in the last 5 years, and they've gotten so many dollars in fines. So all bad press. And obviously to avoid litigation, getting sued when the accident happens. Risk management. In the event of an accident, the potential for litigation is high. Here in the United States, if you have an accident involving your equipment, the attorneys are usually right behind. Individuals will look for any party to hold responsible, even if you're a third-party vendor. I use the term cast net approach. Attorneys use a cast net phrase, basically grab everybody they can in the litigation. And even if you have little or no liability, you will have to pay your attorney to defend you, and may have to pay a dollar amount to get out of the lawsuit somewhere down the road if you're not going to be a party to it in a trial or mediation. Training and familiarization reduces the risk of an incident, and this has been proven time and time again. I have many, many customers, very large customers, who have been using our training for many years now, and they've been very successful in completing jobs efficiently with aerial work platforms with no accidents, no incidents, no damage to the equipment, which is also a big part. Even though no one's injured, we get equipment back damaged, and that can get very costly. Regulatory responsibilities. OSHA and other safety enforcement agencies are designed to protect workers, prevent unsafe activity, enforce fines for violations in the U.S. as well as several other countries, including Britain, have ways of, they cite you for violations that they find. Ensure adopted best practices and best available technologies are applied. This is, again, one of the reasons behind the best practices documents, is to communicate what we feel as an industry is the best way to do things. And, maybe someday down the road, OSHA will adopt some of those best practices as regulations. Best practices, because the construction industry owns a large percentage of aerial equipment, it can influence best practices. By following manufacturers' recommendations, this is a key element to all safe use of equipment. And one of the things OSHA does look at, by the way, here in the United States, is, they will look at operators' manuals and page through it and see if the equipment's being used properly and per the recommendations of the manufacturer. And in some cases, OSHA will even call the manufacturer and say, we've got this application, the customer's using it this way, is that authorized? And then the manufacturer will say yes or no, or ask some more questions, and OSHA pursues a citation or recommendations based on the manufacturer's recommendations. Ensuring a consistent approach to using the equipment, another important aspect of using aerial work platform equipment. Follow a recognized training program by requiring users on their sites to be trained and familiarized before using AVP. Now let's talk about the differences between general training and familiarization. Both are training requirements, so both general training and familiarization are part of the complete training package for aerial work platform operators. Yeah, this is right out of the best practices document, a little illustration to help people kind of visualize what we're talking about when we talk about general training and familiarization. So generally, general training would be covering the ANSI and manufacturer equipment information about aerial lifts, safe use, and the hazards involved, because as OSHA says in the standard that the user operators have to be aware of the hazards in using the equipment. So we will cover that in a classroom session. And that classroom session can be anywhere depending on how complex the equipment is, whether the training is involving multiple pieces of aerial work platform or just a scissor lift or just a push around or one type. Can vary from anywhere from 2 hours to 6 hours long in the classroom. Familiarization, or like we call it at Sunbelt, we call it hands-on training, involves actually going out to the piece of equipment or the multiple pieces of equipment we're going to familiarize you on and doing a walk-around inspection, going over the controls, how the machine operates, going through the operator's manual to make sure we cover everything in a pre-start check, make sure we understand all the warnings and the little lights that come on to tell us things about the equipment, what that means. We cover that with them on the hands-on, and then we actually observe the operator that we're training operate the equipment to our satisfaction, drive it around, go up, go down, usually a little obstacle course that they drive through, and then actually go up to an elevated structure such as a scaffolding or a gutter on a building and actually be able to touch something or pick something off the roof. That helps us understand whether they've got the skills to pass the course. So again, general training, familiarization, and observation during the familiarization are key elements to a complete training program. Again, general training is generally lecture and coaching, discussion and testing, question and answer sessions, case studies, industry analysis, manufacturer safety videos, as well as Sunbelt, and I'm sure some other rental companies do the same thing. We actually do our own videos addressing certain aspects of the equipment. Manufacturer safety videos, presentations and demonstrations, etc. And again, around 20 topic areas to address, and between 4 to 6 hours. Could be longer, but probably not shorter. I just don't see it getting shorter. In fact, if anything, whatever training we're doing today is probably going to get longer and longer as the years progress, as we cover more subjects, more pieces of equipment come on the market, and complexity of the equipment goes up. What does it take to be familiarized? Actually, ANSI addresses this. They identify 4 training areas you have to cover during familiarization, and this is a requirement by the rental companies under the ANSI standard to do familiarization. And we have to show where the manual storage box is located. There's a weatherproof box on the lift that will have the operator's manual and the ANSI manual responsibilities in it. We identify where that is for the customer. We actually show them that they are the correct manuals. The model number matches the model number on the operator's manual, and the ANSI manual is the correct one, and explain to them that they need to read and understand and implement the use guidelines in those manuals. We go over the control functions on the lift, ground controls and platform controls, and this is a big one because, and I could tell you purely from not even a safety perspective, but purely from a service call perspective, number 3 is critical. We get probably 70% of our service calls on aerial work platform equipment is just operator error, not understanding exactly how the equipment operates. And then understanding safety devices on the equipment, different safety devices. So what happens when this warning light comes on and the lift stops operating? What does that mean? How do I get myself out of that situation? What happens if I run out of fuel? What happens if the battery dies? How do I get myself down? So those would be some of the safety devices, although that's just some of them. There's quite a few more on some of these lists, and the more complex the lift is, usually the bigger the lift, the more safety devices that you have to go over. Familiarization upon delivery of the equipment, when we deliver the equipment, would take anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes if we have the full attention of the person we're delivering the equipment to. What is the basic difference? General training is classroom around 20 main topics, and familiarization is more the hands-on aspect of it. So again, both have to be present. And this next slide just explains kind of the differences. General training, multiple pieces of a particular type of equipment, boom, scissors, etc. It might be time and variables, ANSI requirements, prior to use and familiarization, part of classroom and hands-on instruction. Familiarization, specific model of equipment to be operated, manufacturer X, model Y. We're going to show you or familiarize you with this particular model. Time and variables on that too. Manuals, control functions, conditions, safety devices, hazards, etc. Pretty much everything that's in the pre-start checklist and operator section of the operator's manual is what you'd want to go over. And prior to use and as part of the hands-on evaluation process and general training, which is at the equipment or on the equipment. And this next slide just identifies manufacturer requirements. Manufacturers provide training materials. All the major manufacturers of aerial work platforms supply training materials for their equipment, and they offer train-to-trainer programs, compliant both with ISO and the ANSI standard. Dealers and rental companies offer training by providing it or directing them to someone who does. So most of the large rental companies offer training that they have themselves. And if you're a smaller dealer, rental company, you certainly can recommend a training class to one of your customers if they ask about it. But as a dealer rental company, we are required, per the ANSI standard, to offer training to the customer and then either direct them to that training or conduct training for them. And best practice is to offer a formal operator training and familiarization program for customers. If you can do that, that's great. To have all the operators of aerial, and the employer's obligations is to have all operators of aerial platforms properly trained and familiarized, and has a qualified, ideally they'd want to have a qualified trainer on staff and trains as part of employee development. And we're seeing more and more of that happen. A lot of train-to-trainer courses out there offered by a lot of different companies, and we're seeing more and more customers, safety people, especially the larger general contractors and subcontractors, are sending their safety people to train-the-trainer courses to be able to train their own people. And I think that's a great idea because those trainers and those safety people of those GCs or subcontractors know their people the best. They know the hazards they're involved and exposed to. And if they take a standard training program, such as a lot of the companies offer now, and they can better train their own employees than someone coming from the outside sometimes and doing the training as well. So we're seeing more of that, and that's good. That's all good. And again, minimum requirements for the operator to follow and adhere to all the rules, procedures set forth, proper training manuals and standards. Best practices, again, to follow and adhere to all the rules, procedures set forth in proper training. So. Qualification of trainer, a lot of discussion on this one, and OSHA kind of dances around this one. It's really always, as far as OSHA is concerned, it's up to the employer to determine whether a person is qualified or competent and in training. So, but the ANSI SAA A92 standards have defined a qualified person as follows. Qualified person is one who, by possession of a recognized degree, certificate of professional standing, or by extensive knowledge, training, and experience, has successfully demonstrated his or her ability to solve or resolve problems related to the subject matter, the work, or the project. And this is actually OSHA's definition as well of a qualified person. And the key phrase there, I think, is successfully demonstrated. And if you've got somebody who has successfully demonstrated over a period of time that they can train people successfully and then train people on aerial work platform safety and operation, then you've got your trainer. I highly recommend, again, taking a train-to-trainer course, and then you've got the materials already for the class. And I can tell you, in 20-some years of doing this, every class I take, Every manual I read, I learn something new. So, you know, nobody knows everything. Attributes of a good trainer, skills and knowledge. Must know the rules, regulations, and standards. Needs to have knowledge of the equipment, the operator safety manual, warning decals and placards, what they mean. Required to know the equipment's potential hazards. Be able to identify and avoid potential workplace hazards. Understand manufacturer's guidelines for proper and improper use and application of the equipment. And again, a lot of that is you get that through the train-a-trainer classes you would take from the various companies that offer train-a-trainer classes, as well as reading the operator's manuals and getting familiar with what's in the operator's manuals prior to operating or teaching on the equipment. Knows the consequences of improper use and application of the equipment. That's a big one. Not to scare anybody, but we want people to understand the hazards, and in order to understand the hazards, they have to know what the consequences are. Have a good safety record that's based on consistent implementation of the rules. Obviously, a trainer or training company wants to have their own good safety record. So who is qualified to train? Some qualities we were looking for: possesses a concern for the welfare of others, so trainers can serve as a safety advocate. I think this is an important part. Someone who has those empathy towards the people they're training and towards the people attending the class helps communicate better to the class and the attendees. Be intuitive and perceptive with people. Can you read the audience? This is a big one too. It's great to get up there and tell everybody what you know, but you've got to be able to read your audience. Are they understanding what you're talking about? Do they have a perplexed look on their face? Some people don't ask questions. You've got to get a conversation going in a lot of classes so that people can ask questions. Work in a confident and honest manner with the people. And this next few sections, this is the responsibilities. These are the different applications that A92 covers. A92.3 is manual propelled elevated work platforms. These are what I call the push around personnel lifts, the ones you push in place, and they either have outriggers or they just go straight up and down typically. A92.5, which are the boom, self-propelled boom supported elevated work platforms. And A92.6, which is self-propelled elevated work platforms. These are scissor lifts. And just to, again, identify the interested parties, a dealer is a person or entity who buys from a manufacturer, distributor, and who generally sells, rents, or services aerial work platform equipment. So obviously, rental company would be in that dealer section. Delivery is defined as transfer of care, control, and custody of the aerial platform from one person or entity to another person or entity. And familiarization, providing information regarding the control functions and safety devices for the aerial platform to a qualified person or operator who controls the movement of the aerial platform being delivered. The lessee is the person or entity to whom an aerial platform is provided by lease, rental, loan, or other arrangement. Lessee may also be a dealer, owner, user, or operator. And a lessor is a person or entity who leases, rents, or owns. So the lessee is the person renting the equipment, and the lessor is the person renting the equipment to the lessee. Maintenance, the act of upkeep such as inspection, lubrication, refueling, cleaning, adjustment, and scheduled parts replacement. And the manual responsibilities, this is a document that is on the list. It's supposed to be on all aerial work platforms. And the manual responsibility is not the entire ANSI standard. It is simply the section that applies to the user, dealer, owners, operators, their responsibilities, and it lists those in that document. Definition of modified or modification to make changes to an aerial platform that affects the operation, stability, safety factors, rated load, and safety of aerial work platform equipment. This is something we see happen too often. And again, one of the things we cover in our training program, everybody covers in our training program for that matter, is no modifications to lifts are authorized. They have to be authorized by the manufacturer if there's any modifications done. And we actually cover some of the modifications that we've seen in the field that would not be authorized by the manufacturer. Owner is a person or entity who has possession of an aerial platform by virtue of proof of purchase. So obviously a dealer would be an owner too, but a contractor who owns lifts, and we're seeing more and more contractors own lifts as well, so they could be an owner as well. And repair is the act of restoring or good condition that which has been broken, damaged, or worn due to use, abuse, or other reasons. And training, instruction to enable the trainee to become a qualified person regarding the task to be performed, including knowledge regarding potential hazards. And that's the big one. That's potential hazards is the big one, and that's one OSHA looks at consistently. And we go through, this is what the dealers are responsible for. Basic principles, manuals, pre-delivery preparation, maintenance, inspection, repair, maintenance and safety precautions, replacement parts training, familiarization upon delivery. Dealers as user, assist the owners and users, record record retention and dissemination, meaning keeping records of repairs and training that's been done. Control modifications, manufacturer safety bulletins. We get safety bulletins occasionally from a manufacturer, things that have to be updated or changed on a lift. Those are our responsibilities as well. And responsibilities upon sale, transferring ownership, name, address, phone numbers to the manufacturer so they can keep track of where the equipment's going for those safety bulletins and other things. Training, a dealer shall offer appropriate training to facilitate owners, users, and operators to comply with requirements set forth in the standard. So as a dealer, we're required to offer that training. And again, familiarization, which we already talked about earlier. The dealer shall have the responsibility with the person designated by the receiving entity for accepting the aero platform to, and again, these 4 areas should be covered during familiarization upon delivery. And then record retention, dealer has to retain records for at least 4 years. Name and address of purchase of the equipment, records of pre-delivery preparation performed prior to each delivery, records of frequent and annual machine inspections accomplished, and records of repairs accomplished, and name of the persons trained. And training, name of persons trained, date of training, and other requirements, name of persons being familiarized on the lift when they deliver it, as well as during training upon delivery. Proof of training, dealers shall provide trainees with successfully complete training, a means of evidence that they were trained. The dealer shall provide such proof as requested by the trainee. The document evidence training shall include the following: name of the trainee, name of the entity providing training and retraining, name of the trainers, clear identification that training covered self-propelled elevated work platforms, date of training. And nowhere here does it say they have to have a wallet card. We do it 2 ways. We do an attendance sheet that the customer gets. And I think most people do it that way. And then a wallet card is issued. We have them printed up. So within a week or 2, they get the wallet card if that shows completion. But neither OSHA nor ANSI requires an operator to prove he was trained. OSHA particularly looks at the employer to prove, the employer has to prove he trained his employees. So wallet cards are not an OSHA requirement, and that's a lot of misconception. And then we're required to, give out records as requested by whoever did the training, as well as records of maintenance on the equipment as well. And we're seeing more and more customers do that too. We've got some large mines that require us to supply maintenance records, or the last scheduled maintenance form that we use upon delivery of the aero work platform to show that the equipment's been checked out prior to being delivered. So we're seeing more of that happen. The OSHA regulations governing aero work platforms are found under 29 CFR 1926-453, and scissor lifts are actually addressed under the mobile scaffolds or rolling scaffold section, 452W. And again, these are just some reference points in this part of the slide. I understand that we're going to make this available to you after the seminar as well. And the ANSI Committee, just a little bit about the ANSI Committee. American National Standards is made up of industry stakeholders, pretty much everybody I mentioned in the first part of the slide. And we cover a lot of different aerial lifts in that standard. Again, more of this is reference material, what we're covering here. OSHA does reference the ANSI A92 standard. It's listed in a non-mandatory section of Appendix C. But again, we're seeing more. OSHA under this administration has been issuing more what's called a general duty citation. And you can look that up yourself, but basically that is a catch-all regulation that OSHA enforces when they can't find a specific regulation under their standard, then they'll go to a general duty clause. The Scaffold and Access Industry Association's role regarding aerial work platforms, we're the secretariat to the A92 Committee, so we do all the paperwork and organize the meetings for the ANSI Committee, and that those ANSI meetings are yearly. And really anybody can join ANSI, the ANSI Committee here in the U.S. You do have to get voted in, but if you're interested in joining the ANSI Committee, being part of writing these standards, I encourage you to contact me, and I'd be glad to get you an application and have you come to one of our meetings. And it's a little more about the Scaffold and Access Industry Association, formed in 1972, and has been a big part of scaffolding safety since then, working with OSHA on the safe use of scaffolds. And again, these are the two documents available. The one we talked about today is the one on the left, the Statement of Best Practices of General Training and Familiarization for Aerial Work Platforms. And I encourage you to download both of them and read through them. A lot of good information there. And I actually look through them quite a bit myself, and it's great to have everything in one document as opposed to jumping around trying to find stuff. So that completes the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to take the screen back over here. All right, and a rebroadcast of this presentation and our other safety conference webinars are at these two locations. I'll hopefully have them up this afternoon, but please feel free to email me if you are interested in getting a copy of the presentation as well. We have a few questions from the audience, and I'm happy to go over those real quick with you, Jeff, if you've got time.
Great, yep. Okay,
first of all, we just had a comment from, this isn't a question, it's just a comment, but someone mentioned that the impact of insurance claims is the company's experience mod rating, or EMR. If that rises above 1.0, many clients use the EMR as a contractor screening tool, so a high number can also disqualify you for a job. I think that was a comment that one of our readers made, so if anyone wasn't aware of that, that's
yeah, and in addition to, Katie, in addition to that, yeah, the experience mod rate is established by the insurance company. It's a very complicated formula based on 3 years of past experience that your company has regarding workers' comp claims. And if you were to start a brand new company today, your experience mod rate would start at a 1.0. So generally, most big GCs and industrial plants require your mod rate to be below a 1.0. So that shows that you have some years of experience. You're not a brand new company. And if your experience mod rate is above a 1, generally the big industrial plants here in the U.S. would you have to fill out a safety questionnaire. That's usually one of the questions, along with your OSHA recordable rate. And if those numbers are too high, you're just not part of the bid process on renting the equipment at all. So, good comment.
Okay, our first question is, are the operators required to read the manual, I'm assuming the owner's manual, or can this information be provided in the training?
Well, both manufacturer and ANSI requires the operator to read and understand the manual. It would be wonderful to be able to go through the whole manual in a training seminar, but that is almost impossible because every piece of equipment is different, and I mean just little differences. In fact, I just did some video this morning on raising and lowering guardrails on scissor lifts, and when I actually started looking at scissor lifts, I realized that they made a change in how the guardrails are pinned up on from one model to another model, and it's just changed in mid-year or whatever. Yes, to answer the question, yes, the operator would be required to read and understand the operator's manual. That's ideal, but it's almost impossible to cover that in a training class. We do cover a lot of things in the training class regarding the operator's manual, but there's a lot in those operator's manuals.
Okay. What about other languages? Are manuals available in other languages?
Yes, all the manufacturers, if you go to their websites, and I say all, I know JLG, Genie, and Skyjack all offer operators manuals in multiple languages. And you can go to any of their websites and download PDF files of the operators manuals for all the equipment. And in fact, all the equipment they make, for that matter, like Genie and JLG makes forklifts as well, and so does Skyjack. So you can look those, you can get the forklift manuals as well. Yep.
Okay. We have two questions based on length of training. The one that just came through are, if records are to be kept for a minimum of 4 years, does that imply the training on AWPs is required again? And the other question is, how often should the training take place?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, that 4-year thing is just how long you retain records, and quite frankly, I think that's kind of outdated. Most companies retain records based on what their attorney tells them how long they'll save records, not what ANSI says, and it's usually longer than 4 years anyway. But no, that doesn't apply to how long the training's good for. OSHA doesn't address how long training is good for on aerial work platforms. If you look under training under the scaffold standard, there are 3 triggers to retraining, and the 3 triggers, none of them are date. They're changing the equipment, changing the environment, or that you recognize they're doing something wrong on the equipment, being scaffolding or aerial work platform. So those are the 3 triggers of retraining. But that's a great question, because in the industry document, Best Practices for Training, we put in there our industry standard, which is the trainings should be good for usually around 5 years, maximum 5 years. And I think most of the companies, including Sunbelt, our wallet card that we issue, will say that it expires 5 years from the date of training. But that's just an industry standard. That's not an OSHA requirement nor an ANSI requirement. So that's how we deal with that.
Does OSHA currently agree that AWP training should be performance-based, like fall protection and forklift operation?
I have to say yes. I mean, verbally, I've talked to Director of Construction for OSHA and various OSHA people, and verbally they agree practical hands-on training is critical. I would have to say that, again, if you read the OSHA standard is written on a performance-based standard. So what they're saying is that however you do training, the result is in the end result. So if the end result is the guy doesn't know what he's doing or can't answer some basic questions about the aerial work platform he's operating, then whatever training you did, whether it be practical or classroom, wasn't adequate enough. So employers, everybody has to remember that employers are responsible for training their employees. Whoever does that training other than the employer, that employer is still responsible. And this is, I can't emphasize that enough, because we have a lot of customers that call us and have us do training, and nobody in the company that has any supervisory title at all sits through our training, just the workers do. And they have to understand that, yeah, we have some responsibility to provide the training, but the employer, as far as OSHA is concerned, is responsible for that. So, for instance, if I tell a guy in a class he has to wear a harness and lanyard on a boom lift, and he walks out, and the supervisor doesn't give him one or doesn't enforce the use of a harness and lanyard, and he gets on that boom lift without a harness and lanyard, OSHA is going to cite him probably for not having a harness and lanyard and for inadequate training. Even though we covered it in the class, you're still responsible as the employer of that employee who's exposed to the hazards. I hope that answers that.
I think so. If there's more on that question, let me know. Knowing that wind is a potential hazard that's claimed the life of the Notre Dame college student as well as several other people, but wind is only mentioned once in the ANSI standards under the workplace inspection section, what information should be provided to trainees on wind and weather or other subject of that matter?
Great question. Yes. Yeah, that accident in Notre Dame enlightened a lot of people that weren't aware of wind problems. This is something, in fact, prior to that accident, this is the most common question I get called on, just on my 800 number. I have an 800 number on our website. That's the most common question I get. What's the maximum wind speed I can operate an aerial lift outside in? And the answer is it's in the operator's manual. It tells you. you have to look at the specific make and model of lift you're using, and it's in there. Generally, and it depends on the make and model and manufacturer, but generally it's 25 to 28 miles an hour is the maximum wind speed. But again, you have to look in the operator's manual. That's where your answer is. And again, there's some lifts that aren't authorized to be used outside at all. So again, it depends, and that answer is in the operator's manual. It'll tell you not to be used outside in wind or weather. So it's in the operator's manual. That's where the answer is.
Are you seeing a rise in anemometers usage or anything like that?
Yes. In fact, yeah, we've seen there's several issues regarding that. First of all, we're seeing a rise in a lot of companies doing what's called a JSA or job safety analysis prior to using an aerial work platform. Some of the more extreme places are using a permit system, like a hot work permit system, to use an aerial work platform, which requires you to answer a bunch of questions prior to being able to use the aerial work platform. And then one of those questions might be weather, and and then how are you going to monitor the weather? And a wind speed indicator is great, but if the wind speed indicator, if you're up in an area at 120-foot boom, and all of a sudden it peaks at 40 miles an hour, it's a little late for an anemometer or a wind speed indicator to indicate you're in trouble. So there are other aspects to that, and I caution everybody to, when you look at a wind speed indicator or weather reports, again, keep an eye out on and look at fronts. We got great, smartphones that, you look in fact, the day of that accident, I pulled up my iPhone, I looked at the weather, and I could see the front going through that part of South Bend, and yeah, it was. It's in the operator's manual, and we're seeing a rise in a lot of things regarding that accident, which has been great. I hate that that student died, but Notre Dame has done a very good job of communicating what happened and has kept everything open. And all the accident reports available online. If anybody wants to look at it, you can Google it and find it, and a lot of good information.
Okay. There's a handful more questions. If you have time to stick around.
Oh, I have time. Yeah, I have time. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. They just keep coming in, so
That's fine.
it's a popular topic.
Okay, good.
Where can you get certified to become a trainer? Where's the train the trainer question?
Oh, there's the companies. I'll tell you the best ones, and obviously I think Sunbelt has a good one too. But we have our own trainer. But JLG has a great trainer program. Genie has a great trainer program. Skyjack does too. Obviously, IPAF, International Platform Access Federation, has they are a training organization, but they don't do training themselves. They set up training centers, so you can obviously go to ipaf.org, IPAF.org, and look up and inquire about becoming a training center. And then IVES, IVES is another company out west there. Some friends of mine out there. Rob Betters, great guy, has a great trainer program as well. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of good training programs out there, and at I think very reasonable prices, and but in fact very reasonable compared to what you get, because you get training materials, and now so there's a lot out there that you can pull from. And I have a lot of people ask me about developing their own, and I go, why would you? There is a ton of good training out there that you can get. So, okay.
What I think this is just a rhetorical question, but why are scissor regs covered under mobile scaffold?
Well, that's a history lesson in OSHA. OSHA, it takes a long time for OSHA to write a regulation, and the good news is aerial work platforms is not on OSHA's radar, and that's good. OSHA, and when they redid the scaffold standard, they rewrote the scaffold standard actually in 1988. It became law in 1996. They moved aerial lifts from the cranes and derricks standard over to scaffolding, and pretty much left it intact. And the actual aerial work platform standard under the OSHA standard was written in 1969, 1970, when OSHA became OSHA. So it's quite old, and scissor lifts, as we know them today, didn't really exist to any extent back then. So, quite frankly, the short answer is OSHA just hasn't gotten around to it. So there aren't real specific standards regarding scissor lifts. So OSHA, again, looks to the manufacturer. If they show up on a job site and they see guys climbing on the guardrails with a scissor lift, or doing something wrong with a scissor lift, they're going to look at their scaffold standard, obviously, and then they're going to look at the manufacturer's instructions or operator's manual to make sure that they're following the guidelines as the manufacturer set forth. That's what they're going to do, and then they'll cite based on the general duty clause generally there. So.
Okay. Who gets fined in the event of a citation? Is it the operator, the employer, or both?
In the United States, the operator's not cited. No, it's always the. You have to look at it this way: there's a hazard. Who's exposed to the hazard? The employer of those employees who are exposed to the hazard gets the citation. Okay, so the employer is always on the hook for all that, and it's always the employee exposed to the hazard. So a great example of that I use in my class is XYZ electrical contractor has a scissor lift on that, and the plumbing contractor needs to do some work. So the XYZ electrician takes the plumbing contractor up in the scissor lift. Okay, so we got two employers now on one lift. Now what happens? If OSHA comes in and that mechanical contractor is now standing, and that plumber is standing on the guardrails, okay, there could possibly be, there's going to be at least one citation. That's going to be to the mechanical and plumbing contractors, the contractor himself for standing on the guardrails. The operator of the scissor lift could get a citation because he is the controlling entity, as well as the general contractor could get the citation under multi-employer worksite, which OSHA can do, multi-employer worksite citation. So, but the employee is not, cannot be cited. And in fact, there's just been a recent news article, I forgot to mention this to you, Katie, I should send you the link, that OSHA is going to start looking at employers who discriminate against employees for injuries or, bringing citations to their company because they're doing something wrong, because that goes under, could be harassment, it could be a whistleblower, and all that happens, and that's a whole can of worms. That's probably a good idea for a webinar sometime down the road. So that's another problem. But no, the employer always gets the citation. Employees does not get the citation.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. Here's our final question that was marked very important. So probably answer, but do passengers, such as I believe other people riding in a scissor lift or boom lift, do they need to be trained / certified, or is it just the person running the machine?
Well, the answer to that is actually in, and that is something we're going to try to address in the ANSI standard that is not addressed. But in the scaffold standard, under training, it is addressed. And basically, anyone who gets on a scaffolding, whether boom lift or scissor lift, that's considered scaffolding, has to have hazard awareness training. So the operator obviously would have the operator training, but anybody who's riding with him would have to be at least trained in the hazards of being up in that lift. Okay, and I pretty much, in talking to safety guys about this, you look at them and say, okay, if they have to be trained in the hazards, why not put them through the class? Why not put them through an operator class? Because that's going to cover all that. Now, whether you make that guy an operator or not is up to you as the employer. Just because he went through an operator class doesn't necessarily make him an operator. So, for instance, you're a contractor you've trained some operators, and you've got some new employees that came on, young guys, no construction experience. Well, you can run them through the operator class, but certainly I don't think anybody in his right mind would put him in a lift right off the bat. We'd run him through an operator class, then he's aware of the hazards. I would not issue him a wallet card. I would not tell him he's authorized to operate the lift. But for the period of, his apprenticeship period, for want of a better word, he would be in a training mode, and at some point down the road, his evaluation of operating the lift would be reevaluated. That would be the hands-on and familiarization. He would be reevaluated at that point, and then at that point, the employer makes a decision whether he makes him an operator or not. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Jeff. Thank you all for listening in and sticking with us for the hour. If you would like the rebroadcast of the presentation, the information is located on my screen right now. And also we'll be hosting a webinar on battery maintenance next month, sponsored by Trojan Battery. Again, we have a special thank you to our sponsor, CertifyMeOnline.net. Please stop by and see them. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. My info is on the screen. Thanks again, Jeff, and thank you everyone for your time today. Have a great day.